here, and in front of me is the Studiologic Sledge. People have been asking me for a while now to make a video about this thing, so yes, here it is. And I've had the Sledge now for a year or so, and this is version 2. It's exactly the same as version 1, except it's a software update. So if you've got version 1, strongly recommend getting the version 2 update and turn your Sledge into a version 2. Version 2 gives you from 8 voice polyphony up to 24 voice polyphony, plus it unlocks the sample facility, so you can play back samples, which is very cool. I think you might have to pay for that if you're going from a version 1 to version 2, but it doesn't cost anything to get all the other facilities. But anyway, if you do choose to use the samples, the sample side of things, there's a little piece of software that you download from Studiologic, and that gives you the ability to bring in your own samples, which extends the usefulness of this synthesizer quite considerably. So, speaking of this synth, it's a Studiologic synth. That's an Italian company. I think it's the same company as Fatar, so the keybed is a Fatar keybed. But it's in collaboration with German synth maestros Waldorf, you see, engined by Waldorf. This is an entirely digital affair. There's no analog circuitry in this other than the output. And it is it's a gloriously digital synth in many ways. I mean, because it does have wavetables, which is entirely a digital kind of thing, and also it's part of the Waldorf heritage, so it's nice to see that on there. It's laid out like an analog synth, and in many ways behaves like an analog synth, but also behaves like a digital synth as well. So there's lots of cool kind of crossovers there. What is nice about it is it's actually laid out very much like a mini Moog, where it's very readable, and this front panel is quite huge, but we've got our this area here handles all our presets and whatnot, and arpeggios and MIDI settings, but there's a panel button here. Pressing the panel button means that whatever preset you're on then gets ignored for whatever the panel is set to. So that's really nice. You hit the panel button and then the synth becomes just like an analog synthesizer, in that what you see is what you get, and that is cool. And what you get is quite a lot with a 24 voice polyphonic synthesizer. Now there's a mode here, so we can make it a monophonic synthesizer should we wish, but polyphony is the name of the game with this synth, I think so, because there's a lot of fun you can have with having so many voices. Okay, so we're just using, there's a mixer section here, we're just using a single oscillator. Let's have a look at what we've got going on here with one oscillator, sawtooth, square, triangle, sine, those little clicks, the dreaded clicks. You can dial them out with just in the amplitude envelope a little bit. And then we've got pulse width, which is modulatable. And then we've got our wavetables. Now this is exclusively only on oscillator 1, the wavetable functionality, but as you turn the big wavetable knob, the little display tells us the name of the oscillator, of the wavetable, of which there's 66, and I think it features a lot of the classic PPG waves. But like, here we go. So this wave, let's have a look. Microsync. The pulse width knob then scans through the wavetable. And that's obviously modulatable as well. So if I set that to modulate, and I'll just use a sine wave modulator, turn the depth up and the speed, so we get that nice wavetable scanning. Let's just flick the wavetable knob somewhere randomly. Put some filter down on that. It glitches when you change wavetables, but I think that's fairly standard because it's changing the waveform, so it's jumping onto whatever the waveform is, so that may well get a DC offset. The wavetables are really fun because that's something that's very different from what you would get in a typical analog modelling synth. And then you see we can, oscillators 2 and 3, which are currently off, they behave much more like a traditional subtractive analog synthesizer. Switch in oscillator 2. Let's change the balance. So that nice pulse wave, the pulse width movement there. It's not pulse width, sorry. Wavetable scanning means that the texture is just undulating. Let's bring in oscillator 3 as well. In fact, let's set them both to the same octave range. Let's detune both of them slightly. Filter envelope in. And here's one of the real joys of this synthesizer is because there is like one knob per function, more or less, other than the LFOs which share the same knobs, but everything else, one knob per function. It means that you can get around this thing very quickly. You can make patches incredibly quickly. It's a bit of a string patch sort of sound here, I guess. Okay, so one thing then that differentiates this synth from others is, I think, is that the way that the ranges have been scaled is quite unusual. A good example of that is the glide. I love this. I think it's crazy. Normally, glide. Well, this is polyphonic glide as well, which isn't so common. So. So you can hear that moving. Each voice is moving independently, but they're more or less similar. Now, if I increase the rate to maximum on the glide, so I'm going to go. So that note is bending up. Actually, let's just get it so it gets there. Right, I'm going to put the range, put the release massively, hit the lowest key. And so this portamento, or the glide, is taking a very, very long time to reach its destination note. Okay. Where that becomes fun is if we start adding lots and lots of voices in. And now we've got lots of voices going up and lots of voices going down, all taking their own time to get there. Put some noise in. Haha. So the humble glide control becomes really interesting. And then release off. Okay, so I think that's quite a good example of these kind of quite wide ranges. Similarly, if we were to look at the LFO rate, set the LFO to modulate pitches of all 3 oscillators. Let's just take oscillators 2 and 3 and noise out for now. Let's just use a square wave. That's halfway. Let's get a bit more depth. Now, moves up into the audio range. Increase the depth a little bit more. Let's go sample and hold. The release up. Change the slope to 12 dB. Whoa! Sorry about that. That's what you have to watch out for. Again, something to do with the ranges. Okay, let's just stop that off. You know, the resonance, it gets really, does my skull in. Up the resonance goes. So I was clipping it quite easily then. You just have to watch out. That resonance can be very fierce. Here's another thing. So set that back to the modulation, the LFO, to a square wave. Okay. Single note. So it's changing the pitch. And these LFOs, you see, on this version of the Sledge, all the LFOs are free running. There's no LFO sync whatsoever. The new Sledge, the black Sledge, so those of you who hate the colour of this, now, I love the colour of this, but there is a black one now. And that's got a semi-weighted key bed. It's entirely black. In fact, the white keys are black, the black keys are grey. Just the cutoff and the wavetable knob are in this Sledge yellowy orange, which kind of gives it a little connectivity. But that, it does look very nice actually. But one of the advantages that new one's got, other than an increased sort of output stage, I think it's a little bit cleaner in the output. But one of the other things that it's got is LFO2 can be synchronized. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, 24 voices, each one of those LFOs just runs on its own clock. So here, with one note, okay, if I add, let's just slow it down a little bit more. Add another note. See that not quite synchronized? Add a third note. So they're all going at their own rates. Which sounds almost like arpeggiation. Let's just tune it a little bit up. Now this is going to go across all 3 oscillators. And like one note, so you get this kind of crazy stuff going on. If I speed it up, they start to sort of come into sync just purely by being so fast. But if I change this now to volume, now it's not an unreasonable thing to ask an LFO to turn your synth into like a tremolo. Okay, so square wave tremolo, but chord, you know, sounds almost like an arpeggiator or something. But as I say, this LFO does not listen to incoming tempo. It is free running and you cannot synchronize it. So I can see with the new Sledge, that LFO2, having synchronized LFOs, well, certainly that all the LFOs for each voice are synchronized, would give more flexibility than having lots. Oh, they were all synced then, nearly. No. I mean, it's a quirk, but it is quite a fun quirk. I do enjoy it. But it does limit it, certainly. And I mean, that's partly the problem with it being polyphonic. You see, this isn't a problem with a monophonic synth. Put it in monophonic mode, and the LFO is a lot more predictable. Polyphonic. And things are all moving all over the place. But I like that. I do like it because it does allow for some kind of nutty sort of stuff. And, you know, that is the thing about this synth. It's so fast to get around. I guess this is one of the advantages of such a kind of luxurious big space. You know, I mean, this is a big keyboard, really. I mean, it's a 61 note keys, you know, which was the norm a few years back. I mean, synths now tend to have maybe 49 keys or less. But also the panel depth really is quite deep, and that does allow for this really, you know, rather nice layout, which does feel quite physical to actually have to get around. Okay, turn off oscillators 1 and 2. Let's have a little look back at oscillator 1 and look at the sample option, the sample thing. So again, this became available from version 2. Now, going up through this, which is our waveform selector, when it gets to the top, which is wavetable, as a next press lights up the 2 lights there, which indicate that you're in sample mode. And the wavetable allows you to then choose your samples. Now, I've only got a few in here, but what I've done is I've put some multi-samples of mellotron in. So we've got mellotron strings here. Sadly, this control doesn't let you modulate. It doesn't let you do like a wavetable through the samples, although that probably would glitch like nobody's business. But it's quite nice because then your own samples then can be fed through everything, through all of the LFOs and filters and envelopes and effects as well. So have a big chord here. Seeing my filters working on my samples now. So if I augment this mellotron strings with some, take these down oscillators, play them higher. I do like these chicken head knobs. Some people don't like the knobs on this, they think they feel a bit cheap, but they seem okay to me. So it's really certainly nice to be able to bring in some oscillators into that. So that's cool. That works nicely, I think. Something else that I like is this panel here, which allows us to store up to 1,000 presets. You can overwrite any factory ones. But someone was asking me, what do you do if you want to use it live? How easy is it to change patches? Well, see, I could just skim through it with the value knob, but like, you know, 1,000 patches, you know, you would probably want to use the thing here. So if I want to go to patch 50, 050 takes me to patch 50. 40, patch 045 or 012. But what's quite nice is whatever banks of 10 you're in, here we're in the 10 to 20 bank. If I hit 10 hold, then just a single press will take you to one of from 10 to 20. So hit 4, take me to patch 14. Patch 17. And here's cool, look, if let's find something with some sustain. Look, I'm holding a note now. If I change patch, the note has stayed until I release that. So you can do sort of, whoops. Welcome back, my friends. So I've changed to pad now. Terrible demonstration, but you know, it's the fact that it's a true kind of 24 voice polyphonic synthesizer, so much so that those voices keep their sound, you know, keep going until you've released them. And I think that's really cool and allows for quite a lot of creativity. Now with version 2, it does allow you to then actually create one patch and then layer another patch on the top of it, or do a split point and have 2 patches with a split, which is really cool. You couldn't do that previously with version 1. Put massive glide on. There it goes. There it goes. Noise. And then hit panel. That got rid of any of the preset and it just went purely to what the panel set to, which wasn't that different. So you can see the Sledge is a lot of fun. It's a very immediate synthesizer. It's something that you can certainly learn, well, if you're familiar with the principles of subtractive synthesis, very, very quickly, with the additional aspect of wavetables and samples, and to a certain degree you can kind of do a little bit of additive synthesis with it as well. So it's definitely an interesting synthesizer. I mean, as I say, it's a digital synth, and at the price point it's now going to be competing with the Behringer DeepMind 12, which is a 12 voice analog synth with excellent effects. So that's probably its nearest rival. However, I would say that the two are sufficiently different to make them, to make both of them decent choices. As I mentioned, the colour of this might put some people off, but the new version 2, it's slightly more expensive, I think, because it's got the better key bed and output stage. But the Sledge 2 in black may be more to some people's tastes. But I'm rather fond of this colour. I think it's very distinct. Anyway, that's it for me. This is just a little look at the Sledge, and have a little bit of fun with it. And yeah, okay, well, if you haven't subscribed already, please do. It's great to see so many of you there. And catch you next time. I'm Gaz Williams. Bye for now.